There is nothing quite like the State of the Position series. Bill Landis writes it. So there's a ton of stats and stuff that you would never think of. 2, it's got a great look at the current roster to get you set for training camp and a look into the future. So crystal ball. And D, it means it's July and we're almost done with all of these series. This is the Podcast Daily. That's Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. Let's start at the top, Bill, with the quarterbacks. What did you learn putting all this together?
Yeah, I learned that I learned that I still don't know what to expect for 2024. It's weird. Like, the future's incredibly bright. It's as bright as it's been at Ohio State. I think with Julian Sain and Aaron Olin in the room, like as true freshmen moving forward, whichever one of those guys, maybe it's both of them down the line, end up being the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Like, that is certainly a reason to be excited. And like, the room as currently constructed is good. Like, I don't think it's a bad room at all. But I do still have a hard time like figuring out exactly how good it's going to be in 2024. Like, I think the floor is pretty high. But I really don't have any idea of what the ceiling is, which is interesting and exciting and probably partially concerning for Ohio State fans who are wondering the same thing. But it was just like reinforced for me. It's like, it's not that I feel bad about it at all, because I don't. It's just a matter of like, what is this position in 2024? Is it merely like a don't screw this up kind of thing? We have all the talent around you. Just kind of go out there and do your thing and we'll be okay. Or is there some expectation that the quarterback play at Ohio State will still be what has sort of come to be expected of it, which is like still competing for Heisman trophies, still operating at a level where you're considered one of the best in the sport? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm excited to figure out what the answer is once the game started.
I think you're making people nervous with that.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not trying to be. Because I think like it's not the most exciting way to describe something, but I think the quarterback play, like at worst, will be good enough. Like, and I've realized that the bar at Ohio State usually is higher than that. But I also I think maybe the fan base this year understands like how good this roster is, and I think can maybe come to terms with the idea that like good enough is an okay sort of 1 year window way to go about playing quarterback. But I did not go through this exercise writing this, nor am I talking about it now thinking to myself like they're not going to have what they need a quarterback. I think they will. I just don't know like exactly what it's going to look like.
Your 2024 version of this with the quarterbacks made me think about, well, what did we think about the future of the room in 2023? And then some other years where you've been doing this for a while, and it's like they lay out all these plans and we say the blueprint for the future looks phenomenal. You have this all lined up. Like every program in the country would take it. And it doesn't usually work out the exact way that they line it up. Like it very, very infrequently do they get the best case scenario that they envisioned 3 or 4 years in advance, or even 2 years in advance.
Yeah, I think kind of all you can do is stack the pieces and hope. but you're right. Like, yeah, it's probably a little bit of a fool's errand, especially at this position, to project anything beyond the current year. But I guess to that, I would say it works out well. And well, if maybe that's the right word, but like it's a little easier to project when you know or can reasonably assume that the starting quarterback this year will be Will Howard and that like he is done after this year because he doesn't have any eligibility left. So like if that happens, yes, there's like the Devin Brown thing, who kind of miraculously still has 3 years of eligibility left, including this one. Lincoln Keenholz obviously is still around and I think very much has a bright future ahead of him as a really athletic quarterback. But if you look at the two freshmen and you look at the fact and their recruiting pedigree, and then you look at the fact that you're only going to have like a 1 year starter this year, I think it's a little easier to project. But there are a lot of X factors there. Like I wouldn't dare sit here and say like this is exactly how it's going to happen for 2025 and beyond, because we've seen enough examples of best laid plans not really coming to fruition. But I think in today's climate, with all of the movement you can have at this particular position, all you can do is keep putting good players in the room and give yourself a chance for it to work out. And few teams are doing that at the level that Ohio State is doing that.
So when you look ahead, we're 1 month away from training camp. Berm made us do this going into spring ball, which is the Devin Brown of it all, which was what were the odds that you thought going into spring camp that Devin Brown could actually win the job? They wound up being, I was maybe around 25 or 30%. I thought that he raised the number for that by the end of spring camp. I still think it's better than average chance that Will Howard will be the starting quarterback for Ohio State. I don't know what, as we sit now 1 month removed and with spring camp a couple months in the rearview mirror, what do you think about that situation now?
I can't recall what number I put on it going into spring, but I would say that whatever that was, I would be higher now. I think Devin had a really good spring, right? The thing that's hard for me to factor in is, was Will Howard like not named the starting quarterback coming out of spring ball because it was truly close and Ryan Day felt like he couldn't make that call, or because Ryan Day was doing the thing that a lot of coaches do, which is just kind of stringing it along to keep fostering that air of competition with everyone knowing eventually where it's going to end up. Like it's not quite the same. It's not nearly the same thing as Justin Fields in 2019 because there are actually other good quarterbacks in the room. But it's kind of a similar idea, right? You just kind of go out there and say the thing about, wanting to keep the competition rolling. So I don't know which of those two scenarios kind of played more into the decision to not name a starter coming out of spring. But I do think we saw enough in spring ball. I think we saw enough in spring ball to know that like it seemed like it was kind of close between the two of them. I still think in the end that Will Howard's experience is going to be a huge determining factor in this. I think there's another level for Will Howard to get to that I think excites Ohio State. I think in the spring, I believe that like Devin Brown would have to be sort of borderline exceptional in practice to actually win the job. And that certainly remains a possibility. So, but I still think that's the way of things. Like I don't, if it's in any way close, I think it's Will Howard's job because he is just a far more experienced quarterback. But Devin Brown has made it interesting, and I think will continue to do so since he decided not to leave and is sticking to his word to kind of stick this thing out. So if I had to put a number on it now, I don't know. I'd probably say like between 20 and 30% chance. I think that Devin Brown could win the starting job.
Yeah, you mentioned this in your story there that like the situation for Devin Brown is almost identical to the one that he faced a year ago. Like he's the less experienced of the two guys. Now he's been at Ohio State longer than Will Howard. Comparing himself only to himself, he was, I think, easily the best version of himself and far better and more consistent in spring than he was in training camp a year ago when he was pushing Kyle McCord and at times looked like he might actually win the job outright. He's still not the most consistent passer, again, based on 5 practices that we saw and only comparing himself to himself, not to Will Howard, because there were times where we saw Will Howard early in March where it was like, well, he's going to have to do some better things with his arm if Ohio State's going to win a national title with him as a starting quarterback. But I think having both of them is a huge plus, and that sounds like an obvious statement to make, but that's really where I think there is more comfort and ease for Ryan Day. And when you think back to the way he talked about the Kyle McCord and Devin Brown battle, especially in August, but even going back further than that to spring, where he is, I think, stress, like one guy's pulling ahead and then he doesn't do anything. The things that he was saying publicly about it probably should have been more of a red flag in real time than it was to me. And I don't know, maybe you felt different. Like, I didn't think it was coming from a place of panic. It's like, well, I think both of these guys are going to be good. And it was maybe more, and some folks in the fan base definitely were more concerned about it and were like, hey, someone needs to take this job. And I get it now. I'm not trying to relitigate what happened then. But when you hear Ryan Day talk about it now, it's like, everything's going to be totally fine. I feel like he actually, I feel like he genuinely feels quite differently about his comfort with those two guys at the top. And we can include the entirety of the room because there is, I think, a lot more confidence in Lincoln Kienholz than maybe is commonly accepted around Columbus outside of the Woody. And then that's not even factoring in the future outlook for Julian Sayin and Aaron Nolan, both down there at 4 and 5. But like, I don't feel like there's any real uncertainty about it now. Whereas in hindsight, you could maybe see some of that coming for Ryan Day in August last year.
Yeah, I think that's just the comfort of having some baseline knowledge of what these guys look like in games now. Which is interesting for Devin Brown. Like Devin Brown, what did he play? Like 2.5 series in the Cotton Bowl before he got hurt. So like it's not like there's extensive in game experience for Devin Brown, but there's probably enough to feel certainly a little more comfortable than Ryan Day was at this time last year. Will Howard has a ton of experience, and Lincoln Kienholz, practically played the entire Cotton Bowl. So I know it didn't look great, but I think there's tremendous confidence in knowing that if you have to put any of those three guys out there, their head won't be spinning. Like they have like been in a situation before that was rather stressful, and conceivably learned from it and are better because of it. So I think that makes Ryan Day feel a little better. I think I agree with you that I did not sort of digest. Is that the right word? I don't know if that's the right word. No, that's not the right word. That's not the right word. I can't find the word that I'm looking for. But when Ryan Day was saying the things he was saying last year in camp about like really wanting someone to run with the job, and my reaction to that was, this is awesome. Both these guys are good. Ohio State's going to have a good quarterback no matter how it works out. And like, that was the wrong read. And I guess it's possible that we hear something similar throughout this camp in August, because it does. I don't know that there's a tremendous gap in skill between Will Howard and Devin Brown. I think they're kind of similar quarterbacks. Throwing the ball is a little different, I think, for each of them. But if it turns out that that's a close competition, maybe we'll hear some similar things. And I'm not saying that that'll be 100% great, but I do think the fact that both of them have experience now like makes that a little bit easier to stomach if that were the case, which is why I think Ryan Day seems to have a different way about him, even in a world where the quarterback competition does still seem kind of close.
I think there's two key factors that probably have changed that perception for Ryan Day and the comfort, if that's the way we want to phrase it. A, it's the incredible amount of talent and what should be a big improvement in the rushing game for Ohio State. Like that should take a load off of this quarterback, that they don't have to go out and win by themselves. And that ties into part B here, which is the rushing ability that all three at the top have. I don't know enough about Aaron Nolan and Julian Sayin physically to say, hey, if they had to go in, they could also, run quarterback power and quarterback counter on 3rd and 2. Like they're probably not physically ready for that in a way that all Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, and Will Howard would be capable of doing. So their rushing ability plays into that as well. If they don't, point is, they don't have to be CJ Stroud, any of these guys.
Yes.
Where 2 years ago, it was 100% or close to 100% reliant on CJ go out there and be a BPS and throw those dots and unleash the wide receivers. And that's it, because the running game was not going to be able to help them in a way that the Buckeyes needed when the chips were down. But if they don't have to do that, like CJ, they weren't going to run him. Well, Will Howard, Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz can all do that. That adds another element of, again, it shouldn't be the thing that becomes a crutch for the offense, but it's a very useful piece for it.
Yeah, I think it can't become a crutch for the offense. We've seen what that looks like when it becomes a crutch for the offense, and like it's mildly effective but limiting, right? And like I think of the 2016 Ohio State offense when they just really couldn't throw the ball, and then it kind of caught up to them. So this can't be that, but you still want that element within your offense, and that's the reason why. If you look at Kyle McCord's passing numbers and compare them to Will Howard's, like Kyle McCord's are better. And we don't have enough data on Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz to know whether or not, or to know whether or how they would compare to Kyle McCord. So like I see enough questions about like, are we sure that Ohio State is going to be better off at quarterback with what they have now than it would have been had Kyle McCord decided to come back? And my answer to that is yes, only because like I think almost everybody in the room gives you more answers than Kyle McCord could potentially give you. Like I think like Kyle is a good passer, I think, has some stuff to work on clearly at Syracuse. We'll see if he does, but that sort of like it's part of its playmaking, but it's not. I'm not even really talking about like scrambling. It's like can you beat a team more than one way as a quarterback? And I think the CJ Stroud, I think the answer to that was yes. We didn't see him run a lot really at all until that Georgia game, but he was also such a good passer that it was almost okay if the answer was no, he can only do it one way, and that way isn't being an exceptional thrower of the football.
Right.
These guys aren't that, but they're good enough throwers, and then they add the athleticism and running ability on top of that. So I would rather have that than like a guy who's kind of only a pocket passer, but then like not an elite level pocket passer. So I don't know if any of the three guys that you would say that are at the top of the room do anything at a truly elite level, but like Will Howard in particular, I think does a lot of things pretty well. And I think that could be kind of just the recipe that Ohio State needs for this particular roster. There are going to be years where they need the quarterback to elevate things. I don't think this is that kind of year. So I think a quarterback who can kind of do a couple of different things reliably is sort of what Ohio State needs, which is why I think Will Howard was the guy they targeted in the portal.
Yeah, it would be great if every quarterback at Ohio State was CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins with the football in their hands. But I just wonder, you mentioned 2016, and I think what separated JT Barrett and the elite trait, this sort of predates Ryan Day putting that into our lexicon, like, was the competitiveness. So he had, above average at almost everything, and then a 150 out of 100 in terms of heart and toughness in, that elevated in all of those 3rd and 2 situations or in the red zone. And we'll have to see. I mean, Will Howard has a conference championship to his credit and has played in a lot of football games and shown some of that fire. We know that Devin Brown is not lacking in self-confidence in any way, shape, or form, and that has been infectious, and his teammates have certainly bought in to that alongside him. And you look at what, just a few small doses of what Lincoln Kienholz and his willingness to battle and doing it in multi-sport situations in high school. Like, I think that's got to be it. And that would be, if you're trading, you do have to have the elite tool, but it doesn't have to be pure arm strength, I think, for Ohio State to get where it wants to go.
No, there's like I don't even know the word for it. It's not moxie. It's not moxie. It's a different word.
Oh, you look, gym rats, first guy in, last to leave.
First guy in, last to leave.
Coach's son.
Coach's. I think this guy's coach's sons. I think Doug and I did an episode of Kings of Columbus. I think maybe it ran last week or the week before. We rewatched the 2019 Michigan game just to see if there were like any lessons from that. And one of the lessons I took from it was like having a quarterback who's just sort of willing to do whatever it takes to win. And like sometimes it doesn't look pretty. And like Justin Fields at times was like a little reckless with his body when trying to help Ohio State win football games. And these guys aren't similar athletes or runners to Justin Fields, but I do think at least the veteran guys in the room, right? I don't know that we can say that about the 2 freshmen yet because we just need to see more of them. But I think the veteran guys in the room, and I would include Lincoln Kienholz in that conversation now, have that trait. So it doesn't have to be, to your point, doesn't have to be the most polished passer or the guy with the fastest 40 or a guy who can shake people out of their shoes when he's running in the open field. It's just like, when you have to make a play, do you have it in you to like tell yourself and have your teammates believe like, I'm going to make this play? And Will Howard is the guy who I think in his career has done that at times. Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz has not had a ton of opportunity to do that, but the way they carry themselves make me believe that they probably have that trait too. So if they have that, like I would consider that an exceptional trait. And I think Ryan Day would too. And maybe he would just call it competitiveness and kind of leave it as sort of general as that. But I do think that will serve them at the position this year, kind of no matter who the quarterback is among those three. But I think that was also another thing that they saw in Will Howard that they really liked.
Do you want to do the foolish thing and talk about 2025?
I mean, we can't my stock answer is like, I think Julian Saint's the next quarterback, but I'm not going to like pound the. Why would I pound the table like as if I'm going out on some limb saying like I think the guy who was the best quarterback in his recruiting class is going to be this team's next starting quarterback? Like that's sort of just like a natural leap in logic. I know there are a lot of people who really like Aaron Oland, and I liked Aaron. I still like Aaron Oland. And it was really encouraging to see him kind of put his best foot forward in the spring game when I think the previous 14 practices were not always going great, and he was trying to figure some stuff out. And I think trying to learn what it is to truly be an Ohio State quarterback. And I don't know that either he or I don't think either freshmen truly understand that yet. They're going to keep getting that crash course this fall. So like, I don't say that I think Julian will be the next quarterback as a way to like be totally dismissive of Air and totally write him off, because there was a reason that Ohio State targeted him in the first place. He's a winner. He's a pretty accurate passer. He's got some athleticism to him, which we saw when he ran the ball a few times in the spring game. So there's a lot there to like and a lot to work with. I just think it's pretty clear that Julian Sayan's got some next level like mental ability with the quarterback position that it just makes it hard to believe for me that it makes me hard to anticipate, I guess, any other scenario than him being this team's next starting quarterback. But if you want to go into the Air camp, like I'm not going to fight you on it. If you want to say that Devin Brown, if he doesn't win the job this year, is going to come back and try to give it another go for a third time, like I've already been wrong twice about Devin Brown leaving the program. So I'm not going to say anything about that. And then Lincoln's still a really good athlete. So I just don't know what the field's going to look like going into 2025. Like if all four are here, or if only the freshmen are here, or three of the four are here, or what, I don't know. But if I had to pick one right now, I would pick Julian, because I think that's probably the obvious answer based off recruiting pedigree.
Yeah, I think this is certainly one of the instances where you're much better off being patient and not trying to skip ahead. Because Ohio State has a national title contender on their hands. Like, we should probably enjoy that. We always look ahead with like recruiting commits and this future of the program. That's part of the state of, the position group series. But like, so much is going to be determined not just by decisions in December and January, but like what the reps actually look like for them. Because I think that there are going to be opportunities where Ohio State plays more. They keep saying 16 games. Could be 17 games. Like, what does it look like if and when Devin Brown, he's going to get snaps in September? What do those look like? Lincoln Keenholz, I think there'll be an effort to get those too, because a lot of this now it's twofold. You're trying to make sure that Ohio State has more experience in case they need to go to the bench at quarterback by the time that the playoff ramps up at the end of the season, but also because I think they recognize they need to maybe do more to prepare for 2025 and 2026 in years in advance than maybe they have. They always have said that reps in, training camp or in practice against Ohio State's defense are much better preparation than, the fourth quarter against Akron or whatever. And I can understand that and appreciate it, but there's also clearly value to getting into the horseshoe and being out there and performing with 100,000 people online, even if the stakes aren't at the very highest. So I think that we'll see some of that, and then we'll have we'll tap the brakes and like get a more nuanced take on it by November and December.
Yeah, I do hope they play as many guys as they can. I don't. What percentage of Kyle McCord's struggle stem from the fact that he hadn't played a whole lot? I don't know. Like CJ Stroud didn't play at all, and he was kind of fine from the time. So I'm not saying like playing early and playing young and mop up duty is a definite way to make sure you have a good starting quarterback when it's that guy's turn. But I would like to see them, and I think it would be to their benefit to have some game data on all of these guys as they try to make the decision about the future of the position moving forward.
All right, first one out of the way, quarterbacks on State of the Position groups here on the Podcast Daily. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to have another one coming your way on the Podcast Daily for Tuesday. Then there'll be a little bit of a break, but we'll get to that when we get to that. That's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.